Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Before the video starts, I'd like to raise awareness on a friend's GoFundMe. Her family restaurant has been going through some hard times, and I thought I could help them by raising awareness for it on my own channel. A link to it will be provided in the description. Please donate any amount of money you want or spread awareness for it however you can. I'm not asking for much, just to give a moment of your time to help them out. Any form of help would be deeply appreciated. Thank you. 2024 has definitely been a hell of a year. And I mean that in the most literal sense possible. For all the good content we got this year, there's definitely been more lows than highs. Most people would commemorate this by doing a top 10 list of worst movies, TV shows, or video games. But I wanted to do something a bit different. Rather than just making a list dedicated to one thing, I decided to do a trail mix version of this kind of list. Rather than just doing a top 10 worst movies, TV shows, or video games, I'm going to do a top 10 worst pieces of media in general. Which movies, streaming services, and game experiences were the worst of the worst? Let's not waste any time and get right into it. Get ready to dive into some S-rank landfill garbage because this is the top 10 worst things of 2024. Mr. Bertram is what you get when a TV show is made purely out of spite instead of actually providing its viewers with any quality entertainment. Think of it as a right-wing version of Santa Inc. Aside from just not being funny at all, it gets everything about animated sitcoms wrong. Horrible lack of self-awareness, unappealing animation even for the budget they were most likely given to work with, horrible characters with no likable or empathetic personalities, terrible slice-of-life stories with no sense of life in them, painfully uninspired social commentary from the depths of the worst Family Guy episodes, and so many jokes that were made specifically to translate how much the creators hate you. I can't believe this even got greenlit because it has practically nothing to like from every single aspect you can critique a sitcom. It honestly makes sense that only the Daily Wire could come up with something this horrific. If you really want an animated sitcom from the point of view of conservatives, go watch King of the Hill. The next time you want to spite the left, don't make a shitty animated sitcom. Just keep using Twitter after they moved over to Blue Sky. Yeah, you knew this was coming. You can't have a list of top 10 worst things in 2024 without including The Acolyte at some point. While it's not as offensive as the sequel trilogy, it's still nothing to be proud of and the latest piece of evidence that Disney buying Lucasfilm was a mistake on every single level. There's just too many stupid things to go through without making this portion of the video its own separate video essay, so let's just go over the most infamous things about this Wookiee turd. Badly written characters with no satisfying personalities, a shitty mystery plot, a ridiculous cult of women who use the Force to impregnate people, the continued Disney tradition of ruining the fatal nature of lightsabers, pacing that's all over the place from being painfully slow to rushed beyond belief, terrible arcs that actively make the characters worse, the number of ways they get science in this science fiction franchise wrong with the fire in the vacuum of space being just one of several examples, and choppy editing that makes the action sequences less fun to watch. I still don't agree with people who say this is the worst thing Star Wars related or the thing that finally killed Star Wars. The sequel trilogy did that years ago. But there's no denying that the Disneyification of Star Wars is strong with this one, providing nothing that was good about the original trilogy or the Clone Wars cartoons. And all I gotta say is thank God it got canned after one failed season. You thought The Acolyte was gonna be the only Star Wars related thing on this list? Well, think again. Because thanks to one of the worst developers of the modern day, Ubisoft, we have been graced with the presence of Star Wars Outlaws. A game so laughably broken that I would seriously rather play Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. This piece of crap has it all. Horrible overpriced DLC, bugs galore, subpar story, terrible gameplay, abysmal enemy AI, stealth so horrific it gives The Last of Us 1 a run for its money, watered down facial animations, bad audio mixing, a wasted faction system that takes away your ability to use any sort of fast travel, awful camera controls, and voice acting that feels like it was left over from a Tommy Wiseau movie. I am dumbfounded that so many other Star Wars games that are practically decades older at this point have more replay value than this new generation slop. And with the movie and streaming service department already suffering terribly, Star Wars Outlaws is just more proof that this franchise needs to be put down with a planet-destroying laser. Nickelodeon continues to milk SpongeBob for all it's worth and exploiting Steven's legacy for their own monetary gain with yet another horrible spin-off no one asked for. This time giving the limelight to Sandy Cheeks in this abhorrent Netflix exclusive. I didn't think it could get any worse after Sponge on the Run, but this might just be the worst one yet, with all the problems with the other spin-offs and newer seasons of the show multiplied 20-fold. We all know that infamous scene of SpongeBob taking a big whiff of that Texas turd, and that alone was enough to steer us as far away from this as possible. But even putting that aside, there's still plenty of things wrong with it. The decline in voice acting on account of Tom Kenny really showing his age after 20 years of playing this character, a stupid-as-hell plot that retcons Sandy's background, cringe-inducing special effects, comedy that feels like it was written by mentally impaired 6-year-olds on TikTok, obnoxiously loud noises following you throughout its entire runtime, and so many unfortunate implications in the way the movie fetishizes its more disgusting gross-out moments. You'd think that Dan Schneider was still secretly operating behind the scenes at this miserable studio, and honestly that would explain a lot. Oh my god, what was Sony thinking when they came up with Concord? This shit failed harder than Cinematic Venom's attempt to make Lord of the Rings look inferior to Harry Potter, and it's no mystery to how it happened. These have to be the ugliest character designs I've ever seen. It looks like something Tumblr shit out after eating the corpse of Twitter and drinking the blood of DeviantArt. And it's not just the character designs. It's also the fact that this garbage just played horrifically. The online team shooter genre was already played out as hell at that point, but this went beyond just being bland and cliché. The servers utterly failed. Like, you couldn't log into this shit if your life depended on it. Remember that time Nintendo servers crashed because everyone was rushing to play as Joker in Smash Ultimate? Well, imagine that times 10. And if by some chance you managed to get past that, the game ran like horseshit. Terrible frame rate, repetitive gameplay, uninspired level design, unenthusiastic voice acting, and many, many more. When more people would rather play Golem than your game, you have done something truly irredeemable. But if you thought Sony was bad at making games, holy shit, you should see their movies. This was such an embarrassing turn of events that I decided to grant this spot on the list to not one, but two abominations. Sony's attempt at creating a new Spider-Man franchise didn't end with a bang. It didn't even end with a whimper. It just dropped dead. Both Madam Web and Kraven the Hunter will go down in history as two of the most objectively bad movies in the history of the human race. Awful stories, awful characters, awful use of the source material, awful special effects, awful cinematography, and acting that I can only describe as a desperate plea for help from the cast as the studio holds them hostage to make their garbage movies, or else they'll feed them to the flesh-eating dogs they keep locked up underneath the studio. You truly have to be a Chris Stuckman to not see anything wrong with this double masterpiece of disaster. And yes, for the record, fuck Chris Stuckman for not ripping into Madam Web like he was supposed to. So remember when I talked about my plans to do my own interpretation of a top 10 worst animated sequels list in spite of the idea being done by everyone else? Well, let's just say Megamind vs. the Doom Syndicate was what motivated me to try my hand in it. When the time comes, I'll definitely be delving way more into this pile of elephant shit. But for now, think of this as a sneak preview for what I have to say about it in the future. Horrible voice acting on account of not bothering to get any of the classic cast back, terrible animation that looks like it was made for a Disney Junior special, all of the characters being butchered and bastardized of their original personalities, completely asinine world building like how we're supposed to believe this world's technology evolved by 14 years between the events of the first and second movie, no regard for any sort of continuity from the first film, and a plot that only ends up happening because Megamind can't be bothered to use more than 2 of his brain cells to use the dehydration gun in the dozens of ways it could have instantly resolved the conflict. I don't know what was going on through their brains when they greenlit this, but whoever came up with this needs to be fired into a volcano immediately. You wanna know how I got these mental scars? By checking out the worst follow-up to a good movie I've seen in a very long time. As Where Joker was a meaningful deep dive into the progressive psychological descent of an everyman while providing some pretty good social commentary on the fact that no one gives a fuck about you unless you're a successful Hollywood actor, Joker Folie à Deux is an obnoxious courtroom drama deprived of any meaningful drama that says absolutely nothing of value. The songs are so tone-deaf I thought I went deaf listening to them. The tone is completely off the rails and not at all how a sequel of the original should feel like. The story is completely bad with an ending so off-the-wall ridiculous that I can't even say it without people thinking I've gone off my meds. The movie's version of Harley Quinn is so painfully boring that she might as well be a random NPC, the plot adds nothing new to its lead character, and the pacing is painfully slow. Like it just goes on forever. Joker is one of those movies that shouldn't have a sequel. It was perfectly fine as a standalone movie, and this sequel is not only an affront to musicals, but any sort of common sense. Well, I finally got around to seeing Mufasa, and holy shit did it not disappoint. It gave me exactly what I thought I was going to get. This is how Disney chooses to celebrate the 30th anniversary of their most universally beloved animated feature, with a horrible prequel to an already horrible remake. This is what I'm going to delve into more in my upcoming rankings of these piles of shit, so I'll try to keep it brief. The good news is they actually bothered to make the characters emote this time. The bad news is, well, basically everything else about the movie. I find it really disgusting how the prequel tries to apply this revisionism to the original story by making Scar look like a tragic figure, when he's really just pissed that he got friend-zoned by Sarabi. And trust me when I say that's just the tip of the iceberg. The pacing is painfully choppy, the voice acting is still numbingly dry, the songs are garbage, the characters are boring, and worst of all, they have the audacity to imply they might be making a film franchise based on that terrible Disney Junior spin-off with Kiara getting a little brother at the tail end of this crap. And while it's not as bad as The Lion King 2019, it is still a shameful attempt to milk this once proud franchise for all it's worth, just for the singular purpose of increasing Bob Iger's big pile of money. May he be thrown off a cliff into a stampede of wildebeest for the continued existence of these live-action D-makes. Truly, this rape of your senses needs no introduction. Mindy Kaling Season 1 already quickly cemented itself as one of the single worst things ever created by the human race, and Season 2 continues its legacy by destroying whatever goodwill Warner Brothers had left. Everything that was awful about Season 1 is here, taking beloved cartoon characters and making them monstrously unlikable, torturing your eyes and ears in replacement of any actual comedy, trying to look clever by making a bunch of winks to the audience with references to the original cartoon that might as well be middle finger shoved up your rectum. Awful attempts at self-awareness when it's even less aware of the horrific quality of its own writing. Romanticizing abuse to the point that even Kathleen Kennedy would be shocked by how disturbing it is. A brain-numbingly terrible overarching storyline. Having absolutely no respect for its source material and going out of its way to spit in your face forever having been a fan of Scooby-Doo. You already knew from the moment you clicked on this video that this would undoubtedly make the #1 spot. An ugly, irredeemable abortion masquerading as entertainment that only exists for the singular purpose of pleasuring the ego of this repugnant, despicable, conventionally unattractive greasebag. The only good thing about this show is that it ends with Mindy Kaling dying. And that's my list for the absolute worst of 2024. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing me ripping into this trash and will be entertained by future projects, including my upcoming ranking of the Disney live-action remakes. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay cool.